Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. I want to welcome everyone to the Big Book Comes Alive Step Study Workshop. I believe this is our sixth cycle in Zoom. We are in week number 41 of this cycle. And as I mentioned last week, I had to go back and uh, count the meetings for some reason, and I realized we've been doing this for about 16 years on Sunday night, either 5 o'clock or 5:30 or 7 sometimes, but we've been doing it for a while, and it's amazing how it's grown to 100 people now. It's to some nights there were only two or three of us, but thank you all for coming and for passing this along. It's amazing to me how many of the meetings you see in the chat, the big book study meetings that you'll see in there, are from people who are part of this group who joined us and are now doing their own workshops. And that's the beauty of this is I take someone through the book, so they take someone through the book, so they take someone through the book, and that is how we build a fellowship about us. We don't build a fellowship by going to the same meeting, sitting next to the same jamoke, listening to him make fun of and gossip about everybody in your ear during the meeting. That's not how you build a fellowship. You build a fellowship by taking someone through the book, who takes someone through the book, who takes someone through the book. A while back, Kathy and I were in Belfast for a convention, and sitting at the table that we were at were, I believe we counted 6 generations. My sponsee, his sponsee, and so on. It was an amazing thing to witness, to be part of that. So thank you all for doing that. Okay, we are in action. We're getting busy, baby. We have identified the problem. We've diagnosed the problem in the first step, that we have this threefold malady of a physical allergy, a mental obsession, and a spiritual malady that sets everything in motion, that we're restless and irritable and discontented. And that doesn't even begin to explain the way I felt. I hurt, everything hurt. I was a raw nerve. I was overly critical and judgmental, and I was not a pleasant person to be around. And I eventually could convince myself that the sense of ease and comfort that will come with that one drink or that one line or that one pill, that this time it'll be different, that this time I'll be able to stop. And while I can sometimes go along with that, sometimes, well, I'm not going to do it and don't. More often than not, I eventually do give in, and because it's become an obsession. That obsession I give into, and it triggers the allergy. Once I put the chemical in my body, it has triggered the abnormal reaction, which is to want more and more and more. The notion of having enough is just not in my vocabulary. And we've diagnosed the problem, and then we've also identified the solution, that there is a solution, that there is a power greater than ourselves that we have to access, that can do for us what we couldn't do for ourselves, that our problem is our lack of power. That's what it comes down to. We have a lack of power. We cannot fix ourselves. A sick mind cannot heal a sick mind. And so we then took a look at the things in our inventory that were ruling, controlling, and dominating us up until this point. If God is going to be our new director, whatever you want to call that higher power, whether you call it God, or you call it supreme being, or call it well, you can't see him anymore, Waldo, but I do have him up there somewhere. I'll bring him down one of these days. Whatever you call that higher power, that is your personal conception of a God. And we have to find out if that is going to be your new number one. See, I came in here thinking I'm number one, but I'm a number two guy. I'm an actor on a stage, and there's somebody else who's a director. And I came in thinking I'm number one when I'm really number two. And if that's the case, then I had to look at the things in my character that were ruling, controlling, and dominating me up until this point. If there's a new sheriff in town, if there's a new director, Well, what has been calling the shots up until now? And when we took our inventory, we realized, at least I realized, that there's not a single disturbance in my life that was always caused by one of three things. And usually it's all three. I'm angry as hell about something. I'm scared to death about something, or I've done something that I don't want you to find out about, and I'm afraid that you're going to find out. Those three things have ruled, controlled, and dominated us. So we took our inventory and we wrote those things out. And we're now at the point where we have to share that with God, with another person, certainly with ourselves. We share it with God through prayer. We share it with ourselves through facing these things. And we share it with our sponsor by sharing these things. And where we are today is we have started the chapter into action. And the chapter begins by just kind of pointing out 6 of the things that we will have accomplished by the time we get to this page. By the time we get to page 72, the paragraph begins by saying, we have made this inventory, and this is what we've accomplished. 1, we've gotten a new attitude. 2, we've gotten a new relationship. New attitude is step 2. A new relationship with our Creator is 3. And discovered the obstacles in our path. As I said before, those are those things that have ruled, controlled, and dominated us up until this point. And we've admitted certain defects. We've admitted that those angers, those fears, those sources of guilt and shame and remorse all boil down to that last column in the inventory, when we realize that our problem is, I'll see you later. Our problem is that we are frightened, irresponsible, inconsiderate, dishonest, selfish, self-seeking, judgmental. And those are the obstacles in our path. We've admitted those defects. We've ascertained that number 5 is ascertained in a rough way, because there are no perfect 4 steps. All we can do is a rough job. And we put our finger on the weak items in our inventory. That's number 6. Now these are about to be cast out. On page 27, Bill told us that first we're going to cast these things to one side. He kind of builds up to these things. On page 27, he says, we're going to cast these things to one side. Then a few pages later, he tells us on page 48, we cast them aside again. And then on 72, he says we cast them out. And that's where we are today, is we're casting these things out. And when we cast them out, means we're doing it with force. We're not just pushing it aside. We are casting something out, means to do something by exerting great force. And we're casting these defects out with great force. And in the next paragraph, he told us that we've done a good job. Gives us a nice pat on the back. We've done a good job with our inventory. At least we think we have. But have we done enough? And then he tells us maybe not, that a solitary self-appraisal, which is what the 4th step has been, is insufficient. That there are things that we do not or will not see in ourselves that others can. I need someone outside of myself who has walked this path before me, who can see the things that I'm rationalizing and justifying my whole life to avoid facing. So it's easy for me to look at you and see what your defects are, but it's very difficult for me to look in that mirror and tell what mine are, because I've spent a lifetime ruling, controlling, rationalizing, and justifying my behaviors. So I need somebody who has walked this path before me. And I emphasize walked this path before me because it's not just somebody to listen. If all I do is recite my inventory, then I'm not really accomplishing anything. I'm just getting it off my chest. It's cathartic. It's maybe a bit of a relief, but I don't learn anything. One of the quotes I mentioned last week was an actual quote by Herbert Spencer, where he said, the great aim of education is not knowledge. We're doing this inventory to gather the knowledge, to gather information, to get educated. But the real goal is not knowledge. The real goal of education is action, to learn something so we can do something about it. This whole book, as we mentioned way in the beginning, it's a textbook. And what does a textbook do? It teaches us something. And what this textbook teaches us to do is change, teaching us how to change. That's what this whole book is about. So we get somebody who has done this path before us, and we get to it. Let's see if what else I want to cover before we start where we weren't last week. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk to you about. If we take a look on, we talked about, I can't find it. Here we go. Page 73, right in the middle. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He's very much the actor. Again, the actor, the number two man. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. And I don't know if I suggested it last week, but I will now circle the word character, please. This is the one he likes his fellas to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, and please circle reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. Let's take a look at those terms because we've been using them quite a bit all through the book up until this point. If we go back to page 60, keep your place on page 73, but if you would, let's turn back to page 60 for a moment. And on page 60, at the bottom of the page, Bill tells us that each person, each of us, is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. I'm the actor. I'm the number two man. But I'm thinking I'm the number one man. I want to run the whole show. I not only want to direct the other actors, but I want to direct everything. The stage, I want to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, the rest of the players. I'm trying to orchestrate and to get everybody to do what I want them to do the way I want them to do it. And if we turn a few pages past that, if we get back to where I said we were on page 73, he acknowledges again, we're the actor. The outer world wants us to, we want the outer world to see our stage character, and he wants to enjoy a certain reputation. So what then is the difference between this character and this reputation? Well, I heard somebody put it this way, and I don't know if Bruce is here, but Bruce and his partner, Rob, taught me this, but my reputation is what I want everyone to believe I am. That's my reputation. My character, that's the real me. That's what God knows me to be. What the real number one director knows me to be. He knows that I am number two, not number one. And at some point in this process, this inventory process, we have to ask, do I want the applause of my fellow man, or do I want the approval of God? That's what it comes down to, the difference between reputation and character. Do I want the applause? Do I want that reputation of my fellow man? Or do I want what's really important, the approval of God, my true character? So let's get to where we were starting today, the bottom of page 73. I think that's where I wanted to start. We must be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. And I'm going to suggest you highlight that. A couple of things in that sentence. First of all, there's a must. For those of you who say there are no musts in this book, we circle them all, highlight them all in green, and I'm sure Anita will put it in the chat or color coding system. But it's helpful if you want to find all of the musts, rather than going page by page and going over every line, just thumb through the book and look for all the green highlights and you'll find them. Same thing for promises and prayers, which is in pink and so on. But here we've circled the must because it is a must. We must be entirely honest. And I'm going to suggest you underline the word entirely and underline the word somebody, not everybody. You don't have to come to meetings and just spill everything out in the middle of the room. You want to do that with your sponsor. But we have to have one person, at least one person, not everybody, but one person with whom we can be entirely honest if we want to live long and happily in this world, rightly and naturally. And please highlight this, we think well before we choose the person or persons. Did you notice the second at last word, persons? Now, I missed it for a lot of years. I didn't pay much attention to it. But Bill is telling us it's okay to do that. In fact, I suggest that when I do my inventories with my people, I suggest they think of, or I'll give you the name of somebody to do the inventory with again. Because if a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient, then doing it with one person is helpful. Doing it with two people could only be a better idea. So think about that. You don't have to, but it's okay to do that. And he gets into another area here. He says, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. Something that's intimate is something that's of a deeply personal nature. That's what we talk about with intimate. Heard someone break down the word intimate as into me. It's really seeing into me, but it's of a deeply personal nature. And he says of a confidential step. And confidential just is something that's spoken or written in a confidential manner that is given to a trustworthy individual. So basically, we're talking about trustworthy, being trustworthy in both cases. Those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession, and requires is a must as well. Requires is a must too, and so we got two musts on the same line. Requires confession, and of course, will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. We started this chapter into action by Bill telling us what it is we're trying to do. In that first paragraph, when he says we've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship, etc., he starts the page by telling us what it is we're trying to do. By the time we get to the bottom of the page, he's telling us why we're doing it. Because if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. And now we're about to, on the top of page 74, get into the who we're going to do this with. And let me repeat, he said, those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession, and of course, we'll want to go to. And I'm going to suggest you underline that we'll want to. Properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. I think that the reason why that was put in here was the Catholic Church was coming down in a way on the Oxford groups because of confession, that it was their belief, and I'm not Catholic, but I understand this point, that AA, your sponsor is not a priest. And a priest is supposed to be the only one authorized, ordained to hear one's confession. So I think Bill put that in here just to cover his back, because as I said, when this book was being written, the Catholic Church was giving the Oxford group a hard time over that kind of stuff. And so Bill is just suggesting, if you're a member of that club and you want to worship their imaginary best friend, go right ahead. Do this, but do this in addition to, not in place of, in addition to. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by an established religion. Is it necessary to say the reason why? Because they're in the spirituality business too. So why not? We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. And you may want to highlight this. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. That's one of the main reasons why we take it to a sponsor who has done this, who has walked this path before us. If you want to take it to a priest as well, or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, as I said before, you're going to get some relief from that without a doubt. You tell them something you've never told anyone else, it's going to be cathartic, but we're not going to learn anything. It's not going to help us change in any way. And that's why a sponsor who has walked this path before us can see the things that we're not seeing. If I say, in this particular case, I was being irresponsible or inconsiderate, I need somebody who is listening to it and seeing it for what it is to tell me, no, Howard, I think you are outright dishonest, is what that was about. So let's talk about that. Somebody who's done it before me is going to see the things in me that I cannot or will not see. Continuing, this next paragraph was good advice in 1939. Not so much today. But I think it remains in the book because we can't take it out, but I think there's a valid reason for it being there because it kind of identifies why it's so important to do this work. It shows you the lengths that they're going to suggest you go to because it's vital. Remember what we said on the first page. Why are we doing it? Because if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome our alcoholism. In other words, we'll drink and we'll die. So it's that important to do this. And look at the extremes that he's going to suggest we go to. If we cannot or would rather not do this, we search out our acquaintance for, and here's the first suggestion, a closed-mouthed, understanding friend. You may want to underline that. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine doing my inventory with a close friend. Chances are he's going to be on that list, or she is. So not necessarily the best idea. But again, it reinforces how important it is to do this. Here's the next idea. Perhaps and let's highlight doctor or psychologist will be the person. Now, remember, a couple of pages back, he told us that we are rarely honest with these people. We're paying them to help us be honest, and we lie to them. We are so desperate to find the right person, to find a person to do this with. He's telling us, try a friend, try a doctor who you've already lied to for how many years, and it gets better. It may be, you may want to highlight one of our own family. Now, I thought of something, and above our family, I've written the words, our fellowship, because that's my family too. There's 109 members of my family sitting here right now. So when it says to go to one member of my family, I think that still makes sense. Doesn't have to be my blood family. I get more here with you folks. I'll learn more from you folks than from any member of the family, of the blood family. It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or parents, which will hurt them and make them unhappy. Please highlight the rest of this paragraph. I think it's noteworthy. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. We don't seek relief at somebody else's expense. It's selfish, it's self-centered, and we're trying to get free of those things, to go from self-centered to God-centered. So telling somebody something because I got to get it off my chest or I got to do this is selfish. So we don't do that. We don't save our own skin by costing somebody else's. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand. You may want to underline, yet be unaffected. And that just means not involved. So in this whole paragraph, I've picked out 3 words, really, that are good advice for how to pick somebody. On the second line, it says closed mouth. So I put number 1 over that. Whoever we're talking to needs to be closed mouth. Number 2, they need to be understanding. And number 3, we just read, be unaffected, not be involved. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves. There's another must. Be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. That's one of the only rules. There's only 3 rules in this book. I'm sorry, 4 rules in this book. This is one of them. Let's hold our place here on page 74 and let's jump around a little bit. Let's play word games. Rule number 1 is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. That's the first rule. Turn to page 101, paragraph 3. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there's drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That is rule number 2. The term I was looking for before was connect the dots. That's what we're going to be doing, is connect the dots. I think I said play word games, but we're connecting dots. So on page 101, it says if we can go anywhere we want if we have a legitimate reason for being there. Next, page 118, paragraph 2. One, 2, 3, 4 lines up from the bottom of the second paragraph. Live and let live is the rule. Live and let live is the rule. How's that? It's a rule. And the last rule is on page 125, paragraph 3. 125, paragraph 3. Many alcoholics or enthusiasts, down last paragraph. They run to extremes. At the beginning of recovery, a man will take, as a rule, one of 2 directions. He'll either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet in business, or he may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of little else. That's the guy who's spiritually intoxicated. He's going to get everybody sober. But that's the 4th one, that people go in one of 2 directions very often in the beginning. But those are the 4 rules. So if we go back to page 74, next to the first rule, the rule is we must be hard on oneself, but always considerate of others. Next to it, I've written, see page 101, 3, 118, 2, and 125, 3. There are your 4 musts in the book. Notwithstanding the great necessity, there's a hidden one. Great necessity is a must. It's not an obvious one, and it's an expensive one. I think it's a good $50 one, but it's in there. The great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, and please underline, it may be one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. I'm going to suggest you highlight the rest of this paragraph, even through the 2 lines on the next page. And I'll just repeat what I just said. It may be that one is so situated that there's no suitable person available. Now we're talking probably about the guy who's up on the polar ice cap, who sees like once a year someone comes around and gives some supplies. Well, God help that guy when he shows up, because he's going to get this guy's fifth step, because he's the only person he sees, because that's what the book says to do. If you're so situated and there's no person available, if that is so, this step may be postponed only, however, and please underline, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. That guy who shows up with the supplies once a year, grab him, sit him down, strap him into a seat. If you have to tape him down, duct tape him into the seat, and he's going to get your fifth step, or she. We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. And then he's going to give us some of those reasons here. Let's underline a few. It is important, and I've underlined the word important, and I've put the number 1 above it. Here's some reasons why we do that. It's important, obviously. It's important you be able to keep a confidence. Keep a confidence is number 2. That he fully understand and approve what we're dealing at. That's number 3. 3 of the qualities that person needs to have. That he needs to be, it's important. They need to know it's important. They be able to keep a confidence, and that they fully understand and approve what we're driving at. If they don't, they may likely tell us, you're being too harsh on yourself. That's really not you're not this, it's not that. You're being too tough on yourself. Now, again, this is not applying to the guy on this polar ice cap. This is who we can pick if we have the ability to pick, and we do. Just go to a meeting. You'll find plenty of people there more than able to do this. And that he not be willing to not try to change our plan, but we must, there's another must, not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. Please notice how many times he uses that word we. Again, the step tells us we admit to ourselves, to God, and to another human being. So here he's now addressing, besides us, who's the rest of the we? It's me and God. When we decide who's to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory. Please underline that word inventory. And above it, I've written list, just to remind me I'm not reading a biography here. The 4th step was an inventory, which is defined as an itemized list. So I'm not reading a biography here. We have a written list, and we are prepared for a long talk. Let's underline long talk, and above it, write this story. And I think this is one of the places where people get the misconception that we're supposed to write out our life story, that we're supposed to have this long talk and tell everybody our life story. But that's not what it says. That's not what it says. We're going to be telling our story through the things in our inventory. If the fact that I was born in 1952 at Brooklyn Jewish Hospital, and my dad's name was this, and my mom's name was this, and all those biographical data, if it has no bearing on my inventory, it's wasted time. So we don't put that kind of crap in our story. We go through the inventory in terms of the questions that were asked about our angers, about our fears, and our sex harms, and harms other than, we'll get to that too. We are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner, again, we, God and me, what we're about to do, and please underline why we have to do it. He should realize, and let's underline this because this is why we have to do it. We are engaged on a life and death errand. And I've got a couple of exclamation points after that. That's how important it is. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They'll be honored by our confidence. I don't know about anyone else, but whenever someone asks me to take them through the steps or to do a fifth step, I'm not a hired gun. I don't just do fifth steps with people. But if you ask me to take you through the steps, that is the greatest honor that you can give another person in recovery. I think that's that indication of trust and love and confidence that comes with that. Um, that's not an easy ask, and it's a big responsibility. So personally, I don't take it very lightly. If I agree to do it, it's because I have the time to do it and I can do it right. I don't try and squeeze as many people onto the roster as I can. But I will always, if I cannot fit you into my schedule, I will get you someone who will. So we always accept that with honor and dignity when someone asks us to be their sponsor. So we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And I usually stop right there because that's the point at which we should be doing our fifth step. He's telling us we stop, we pocket our pride, and we go to it. There's a couple of things that I did wanted to go through with you that I think we kind of missed. So let me go through the next paragraph, and I think we can include this. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And I'm going to suggest that you highlight the rest of the paragraph in pink. In pink. These are step 5 promises. These are the results of step 5. So this is what we expect to begin to feel as a result of having done the 5th step. Once we've taken this step, withholding nothing, please underline that, withholding nothing. Remember our directions at the beginning of the 4th step. Bill told us 2 things: be thorough and honest, meaning we don't deliberately leave something out. We don't intentionally leave it out, because I'm not going to talk about it in my 5th step, and I'm certainly not going to make amends for it in my 8th or 9th step. So I'm not even going to put it on the list. We don't do that. If we have done this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We are relieved. In this context, that's what we're talking about. We're relieved. We're not coming here for any reason but to be relieved. We're offering relief. We can look the world in the eye. Please underline that. We can, I'm sorry, well, let me finish it, then I'll come back to it. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Let me repeat those 2 sentences. I want to emphasize some words. We can look the world in the eye. Does it mean I will be able to? No. It's promising me that if I've done this thoroughly, that's one of the many results. Here's another one. I can be alone at perfect peace and ease, versus when I am in my state of dis-ease. When I'm alone, I'm lonely. When I'm in my state of recovery, I can be alone at perfect peace because I'm at ease. When I am in my dis-ease, when I'm not spiritually fit, I'm lonely when I'm by myself. I've mentioned this before, and we're going to get into it a lot more as we go further on. But one of the warning signs that I always talk about in terms of regression is to watch for your relationship with other people. The first sign I have that I'm starting to slip a little bit, that my program is maybe coming apart a little bit, is on page 52. I start to have difficulty with personal relationships. That's the first warning sign. And that's what we're talking about here too, that if I'm in a state of ease, I'm at peace. But if I'm by myself and all I do is feel lonely, I've got some work to do. I got some work to do real fast before I go through the rest of the bedevilments. So we can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. Let's underline that, incidentally. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, and let's underline, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we're on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Now, I had somebody recently that we just did his fifth step, and he came to me with this paragraph and said, I don't feel any of that. I do not feel that I'm walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. I do not feel the nearness of my Creator. I still can't look people in the eye all the time, and I'm not at a perfect state of ease. So what did I do wrong? Well, we got to go back to the inventory and look what we did wrong, because we're about to get some questions towards the end of this page that may help us figure that out. But these promises are, if we have done it as we're supposed to, if we've done it withholding nothing, and we have to find out what is it that we've withheld. And when that guy pointed that out to me, the first thing I said to him is, right now, what is that thing that just went from one ear to the next, right through your head? What was that thought? Because whatever that thought is, that's where we need to start, because we haven't been thorough and honest. And you know that because it just ran through your mind, whatever that is. And we need to get down to what that is. So we've done a lot of work. Andy, can I have let's see, 61, oh no, 611, 611, if you will, spiritual guideposts. All through the book, I believe Bill has been giving us these signposts, these touchstones to measure our spiritual progress. It began in step 2, where he told us to search diligently for this power. Search diligently, and then later he tells us where. Search diligently within ourselves. But then we get to step 3, and he says we became conscious of his presence. And the way I like to look at that is that I'm in an empty room. There's no furniture, there's no lights, there's nobody else in there but me. Yet I sense another entity in that room. I sense I am not alone. I am conscious of a presence besides myself in step 3. And here we are in step 5, where I now begin to not just feel the consciousness of another, but I feel the nearness of that Creator. I begin to feel the nearness of my Creator. And when we came to this, I pointed out to that guy, if he's doing what I ask him to do, and what I always ask my people to do is, at night before you hit the pillow, one of the last things I ask you to do is ask, where did I see God today? I saw God today in. I guarantee it's there. He's there. 99 out of 100 times with me, I'll say I saw God today in, and it'll be in my conversation with Paul, or in my conversation with Dell. I see it in interactions with other people in recovery. I see God. I watch God's hand all the time in those cases. So when that guy tells me he's not beginning to feel the nearness of his Creator, how are you answering that question? You must be answering that question. Notice it. And then by step 10, we begin to sense the flow of that spirit into us. And in step 11, we make conscious contact with God. And Andy, if you'll switch, we got another one where I highlighted it similarly, 519. It's a graphic design. We begin by searching diligently, and there we are with that. We've got a flashlight on. We're feeling around for a light switch in a dark room, and then we become conscious of his presence. We're in that dark room, but we just feel there's something else there with us. And then in that left-hand corner in step 5, we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We're reaching out. We're beginning to feel that nearness. And on the right, we begin to sense the flow of that spirit into us. We begin to make contact. And in step 11, I have just made conscious contact with God. And on page 84, we have entered the world of the spirit. This is the process that we're going through. And I like the illustrations because it helps me envision the progress that we're making. All right, let's put that aside. What are some of the other things I wanted to go over with you today before we wrap it up? You know what? I don't want to go on to step 6 and 7 at this point. No, it's not fair